Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about Anabella from Final Fantasy XVI. As you know, a week or two ago, I talked about the fact that I beat Final Fantasy XVI, and I want to just make a video talking about this character because I was watching some clips recently that made me go, you know what, I could just do a whole video talking about that character because I haven't been able to express my feelings about that whole situation. So do know that this will be a Final Fantasy XVI spoiler, so if you have not at least gotten to a certain point in the story. If you haven't beaten the game, just simplify things. If you haven't beaten the game, do not watch this because I don't want to spoil anything. But Anabella ends up being one of the most villainous characters in this story, and I think it's so interesting. I won't go as far as saying that she's the most monstrous, terrible character because there are worse people in this continuity than she is. Because I was recently watching a clip from the Castle Super Beast podcast where like Wooly and Pat, this was like a couple months ago, so obviously I only just recently beat the game, so I was watching it, but they talked about like, oh yeah, the whole orphanage situation with Lou. Now those are some terrible people. So once again, everything around the bearers is a terrible situation, but Anabella's a special kind of terrible in so many different regards. I want to break down some of the interesting but terrible things about her character which makes her so villainous. Outside of like Barnabas and his like cult-like mind about why he's doing what he's doing, you know, he's responsible for a lot of terrible stuff because you know, worshiping his god Ultima and all that. But either way, Anabella, like she's, I mean, a lot of people have done a lot of stuff out of self-interest, and she has as well. But once again, let's start from the beginning. Her relationship with Clive is so effed. Because when the game starts and you see like the disdain she has from Clive, I'm like, oh, she must be like Clive's stepmom. And you find out, no, that's his biological mother. His only crime, her only beef, her biggest beef with him is that he was not born the Phoenix. And so in her eyes, even though he's flesh and blood, he's a failure. And that's why she coddles and holds Joshua so near and dear, because it's like, oh, he's the one that's actually continuing. He's the one that's the Phoenix's dominant. But it's like, yeah, but that's still your son, you know? And you know, Elwyn always kind of stood up for, you know, Clive, even saying the line of, if it wasn't for men like Clive, that bloodline of yours would mean nothing, you know? Once again, that's your flesh and blood. That's not your stepson. That is your son's son. Not less that is, but once again, nothing in the game has ever said that that's like, everything pointed towards that being one of her biological kids, and it just sucks that you treated him that way. Because he never, once again, his only crime was not being born the dominant, not being chosen by Phoenix. And that's his crime, because he was the firstborn. In her mind, it makes him useless. Because if you're not furthering the legacy that is our bloodline, because even everyone's like, I only got the throne because my dad died earlier than he was supposed to, and I think maybe it probably goes to him first before it would go to his brother Byron. But I think it also could just be like, I think, didn't Byron like abstain from the throne or whatever the case may be. So he's like, I only got it because of this. But she's like, still, oh, you still are the king and yada yada yada. It's like, you will view, I mean, maybe the argument is she always viewed Elwyn as less than anyway, but she just tried to prop him up just because she needed him to manipulate him, yada yada yada. It's just, that's first and foremost, she's just a terrible mother in that regard. She doted over Joshua, but the only reason why she did is because he was a Phoenix. If he was like Clive and failed to be the Phoenix, she wouldn't have doted on him as much as she did. And speaking of like bearers and stuff like that, let's talk about her treatment of bearers. Like, I mean, she's not alone. So many people in the universe. Obviously, the bearers are like one of the most despised people in existence in this continuity, which is so effed up. Obviously, you learn about the truth about what that wasn't always the case, but you know, history is kind of written by the victor type of situation. So, either way, Anabella's like full-blown attempted genocide of bearers. Now, I don't know if she would have continued down that route. I don't know, because like she would like. There's the East Pool situation. I mean, she literally had everyone in that village killed, bearer or not. Oh, you're housing bearers? You need to die. To be fair, that's like a punishment. Like, that's not even just a her thing. That will be a law thing of like, oh, you're harboring bearers that have ran away from their master or whatnot. Like, you are culpable for that, so you suffer some ramifications. So that isn't just a her thing, but her enforcing it as much as she did. She killed everyone in that village. She also killed, what was that other, was it? I forgot, it's that Dock village. Like, she kills like 99% of the people there. You find out later on when you revisit at one point, there's like 2 or 3 curse breakers there, and you're with the one survivor from that village. It's a nameless NPC, but yeah, there is at least one person who survived. But she, like, I mean, they strung them up. I don't know if those were her specific orders, but she still gave the go-ahead to do this. I'm sure she probably said, make an example of them. Once again, they strung up people just to be like, oh, warning to anyone that wants to try and protect bearers or let them have their own, like, place and stuff like that. It's just, and there's just so much death and destruction she calls because of that. And I think this is what makes her so evil, is when you find out her reasoning behind it. Everything she did, betraying the kingdom, you know, basically having her husband killed, basically not killing her son, but deciding like, oh, he's a good soldier, so let's make him a branded, make him part of our frontline soldier, so he serves some greater purpose for Sambrek. All that was for the purposes of, so she can join with Sambrek and end up combining her Phoenix bloodline with the Bahamut bloodline. That's all this was. Because I was thinking the entire time, like, what is her motivation? Why is she doing this? Her hatred of bearers, once again, that's just her, like, she looks at everyone less than, because she's like hoity-toity and from a prestigious bloodline, and she looks at everyone as less than, but especially bearers. That was her ultimate motivation. Just she wanted to, like, bring new life to her lineage of, like, not only are does my blood contain the dominant, the Phoenix icon, it could be, you know, can choose a dominant in my bloodline, but also now you add in Bahamut, and that those two bloodlines mixing together can create something greater. It's just about her own legacy, like in the family legacy that she has, what she can contribute and make it even greater and better, yada yada yada. That's her motivation for everything, you know. And that's just the saddest thing, and that's what makes that moment with Clive and Joshua so good, where it's just like, she's like, right, I lost Joshua, and Clive is like, well, look, you're not looking out the window, dude, there's Joshua right now. The Phoenix still lives, and the son that she disdained so much ended up being so important. You're like, oh, he's not the Phoenix, who cares, he's nothing. And then that look on her face when she gets to see him turn into Ifrit, it's like, yes, the son you wanted nothing to do with is also a dominant. He's a very special case even amongst the other dominants, because he can absorb the power of other dominants and their icons. And you know, Clive has a whole mythos situation, so he's even more special amongst the dominants and the icons. And it's like, this is the son you wanted nothing to do with. And I wish, it's so, like, frustrating, because you're like, she took the easy way out. She had a mental breakdown. She wasn't listening to anything anyone had to say. Dion just killed her new baby boy, who would have been the birth of her, who was the birth of her, like, legacy continuing on. Dion killed him, and then what does she do? She snaps and kills herself, being like, no, this isn't real. I refuse to accept this, because she can't live with the fact is what she done, because with her new son dead, everything she did was now for nothing. It was all nothing. And then, once again, she is responsible for her own actions. Yes, Ultima whispered and nudged people in certain directions, but it's still the thing of, they made their choices and she made her. She's still responsible for everything she was doing, because even before, I mean, who knows if Ultima, like, was whispering in her ears. We know, like, her son, her son that she had with Dion's dad is like, that was a pawn by Ultima, and so who knows how much whispering was done at that point in time. But, you know, 13 years ago when she did everything, well, at that point it would have been 18 years ago, because once you get to, like, that confrontation finally, that's 18 years later. But when she did everything 18 years prior, like, you know, the Phoenix Gate situation and the end of Rosaria, like, you could say, like, that was still all her. Maybe Ultima was whispering in her ears back then, or maybe that was just something she did on her own. Who knows? Like I said, it's just frustrating that she got to take the easy way out, just despite all the terrible, terrible things you did, you know? And you could tell, like, despite everything, like, Clive was probably not as heartbroken, but you could see Joshua being like, you know, put down the blade, mom. Like, he's trying to talk to his mom, because it's like, despite all that you've done, you are still our mom. You're like the only other than Byron, you're the only other family we have left. You are our flesh and blood. You are our mom, you know? So that is this complicated thing of, can you, and just like after her death, it's just kind of like, yeah, you move on, because it's just like, yeah, she stopped being your mom a very long time, especially for Clive. Like, the moment you were not chosen to be Phoenix is dominant, she stopped being your mom, and Joshua still was holding on to something. Like, I don't know what I wanted. Did I want her to get arrested? Like, yeah, that story was probably going to end that way, because there was no way she was ever going to let herself be punished for her crimes. And she would have been, I think, despite everything. Even, I don't know, like, that's the thing of, like, she's not in a position where, like, I don't know if she would have actually ever suffered any ramifications for what she did. So it only feels poetic, for, you know, that seemed like the only option for her. It's just frustrating because I wish she had gotten more of a comeuppance, but I do like that before it ended, she got to see, like, oh, Joshua's still alive. All my machinations were lost. What was her plan with the whole Phoenix? I mean, obviously with the Phoenix Gate thing, she didn't want Joshua to go. She wanted him to stay with her, but everyone was like, no, he has to go through the rites as, you know, Phoenix is dominant and everything like that. But she thought he was dead. But at the time, she didn't seem that heartbroken, like, oh, whatever. But it's like, oh, you want to use him as an excuse now. Like, what else did I have? I had to do this now that, but it's like, no. The moment the Phoenix Gate thing happened, you sent Clive off to be branded and to be a member of Sanbreque's army. At no point did you show any remorse of like, oh my God, what happened to Joshua? You're just like, it is what it is, and you moved on. And now in this moment, 18 years later, now you want to act like you care. It's just like, especially because like that character was acting so haughty and smug so often, and for that to be your end, once again, it was all for naught, you know? You ended up being this big villain in his universe, and your children, at least 2 of the 3, ended up being heroes, sacrificing for the greater good, for not just everyday people, not just for those in higher noble positions, though, and you know, commoner people or those at the very bottom, bearers. They did it for everyone, but also for bearers to save so many lives in the future by doing what they did, fighting this fight. And it's like, yeah, you will go down in history of just being a terrible person. I mean, really quickly, even speaking on the bearers thing, I was thinking about this recently because of Pat and Woolie's conversation. I don't know if it was the same video, it was a different FF16 video they were talking about. Like, the fact is, Elwyn had his, that final quest lets you know, like, oh, well, it's like a quest between Joshua and Clive where they find out their father's legacy, and the fact is of what he wanted to build. It's so interesting to know that he was trying to do all that, all the while Anabella knew exactly, like, she was so anti bearers. It's like, dude, like, you must have been seething the entire time you were with him. Anytime he showed like any form of sympathy or grace when it came to bearers, like, it must have burned you up on the inside. But you're like, I have to wait, I have to wait, I have to wait, I have to wait to make my move. I mean, at what point did you decide that you were going to betray everything that you've come to know, this life you kind of built for yourself? Like, how long was it going to be before you decided, like, oh, I'm just going to like torch it all and sacrifice this kingdom I'm queen of, you know? So, like I said, I do not believe her to be the most evil character in this series, but I at least feel like she's definitely up there. She's at the top of the list. I don't know if I'd put her top 5 or not. I'd have to really like break it down, but it's like, yeah, because like, once again, she's one of the few characters that did everything, all these terrible things, machination wise. Once again, it's this medieval political situation that is like, right, the political games that are being played, is it just something she did? No, there's other people doing the same thing. It's just like, she's the one that you're just kind of like, especially because you have the personal connection because of Joshua and Clive, of realizing how awful she is because you have that personal connection playing through Clive. But obviously, these are just my thoughts. Love to get to know yours in the comments down below. How did you feel about Anabella? Do you agree with some of the points I made? Do you disagree? Do you want to add some points to some of the points I might have forgotten to bring up during this video? Just let me know all your thoughts. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.